Welcome to Women in the Golf Industry. And this is our WIGI-pedia for August 8th, 2023. So welcome to everyone. And WIGI-pedia is, for those of you that know, is our educational series that we highlight our members who are going to be subject matter experts. They're going to be sharing their knowledge and their expertise. I'm very excited about today's panel, and we've got 4 distinguished women. For those of you that also maybe know this, on alternate months, we also ask you to join us for our Getting to Know You calls, which are a little bit more casual, but it's about connecting in our mission for women in the golf industry. And we want to connect and support other women in the golf industry. So we do our Getting to Know You calls, and then we have different discussions on how we can use our resources, et cetera, et cetera. Many of you know me, some of you don't know me. My name is Kay McMahon. The name of my company is Education Golf, but I'm also the current president of WIGI, and I'm very happy to be doing that. So as I said, today's subject is redefining the grass ceiling with 4 of our distinguished women architects who are also WIGI members. So let's get started today. And the subject matter is redefining the grass ceiling, again, with our 4 distinguished golf course women architects. They're all entrepreneurs and they're all WIGI members. So what we're going to be doing today is exploring their stories and talking about women-friendly golf course designs and sustainability. When we did our pre-call, they all had so much to say. I said I should have been recording that because it's going to be just fabulous. So let me introduce the 4 distinguished panelists. We have Jan Beljan, who is the founder and president of Jan Beljan Golf Course Design, which she established in 2009 and headquartered in Jupiter, Florida, I believe. Jan was elected into the American Society of Golf Course Architects in 1990 and has served on the executive committee, and I believe she was the only second woman president, where she served in 2019 to 2020. She also represents as a board member of the ASGCA on the National Alliance for Accessible Golf, and has been a WIGI board member, I believe, for well over 10 years. She has presented customized programs to the PGA of America, the LPGA, CMAA, and others on environmental economics, retaining and engaging more women in golf, and inclusion of people with disabilities in golf. Sports Illustrated named her one of the top 10 most influential women in the game of golf. So Jan, you can unmute yourself and say hello. Well,
there I am. Hello. If you hear rumbling in the background, we have a thunderstorm about to happen. So there we are. As a point of interest, Alice Dye was one of our founding members, and Alice Dye was also the first female president of the American Society of Golf Course Architects. So just as points of interest for everybody. Happy to be here. Happy to be one of the WIGI members, and anybody who hasn't taken advantage of being part of this doesn't know what they're missing.
Well said. Okay. So then that leads us right into Cynthia Dye. Welcome. She's the founder and principal designer of Dye Design Golf Group, which she founded in 2001 and now headquartered in Denver, Colorado. She is also a member of the American Society of Golf Course Architects, and for more than 30 years with Dye Design Group has been actively carrying on the renowned Dye family golf course architect legacy. She has many global projects from the United States to Portugal, China, and South Korea. So please welcome the distinguished Cynthia Dye. Thank you for being here. It's an honor to have you here.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. This is quite an honor to be included in this group of very accomplished women. And yes, I hope this is a great forum, and I think I'm looking forward to a great future in it.
Thank you. We're just excited that we got reconnected, so I'm glad you're here. Our next panelist is Kari Haig. She's the CEO and founder of Kari Haig Planning and Design, Inc., founded in 2005, and she's based out of Minnesota. So it's nice to have a fellow Minnesotan here. Kari is a golf course architect, and she was trained in Scotland and is a full member of the European Institute of Golf Course Architects, where she also serves as the chairperson for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. She is recognized in Europe as a leader in golf course design for women, senior men, and other, I love this, slow swing speed players. I'll say that a few times as a tongue twister. She is committed to eco-sensitive and sustainable golf course design and the improvement of golf course playability for women and seniors. Welcome, Kari.
Thanks a lot, Kay. Thank you for inviting me today, and I'm equally honored to be in the presence of everybody on this Zoom here. And I have to invoke the Di name one more time. I just had Alice's poster framed in a double glass sandwich frame, so you can see both sides of it. You can see that it was a mailer. So I'm really excited to have that poster in a frame.
She was, as we say, this is no pun intended, a groundbreaker, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
All right. Last but not least, we have Amanda Barbee. She's just joined WIGI in the last year, but she's the Senior Design Associate with Beau Welling Design, which is a golf course design and land planning firm located in Greenville, South Carolina. But she is also a design consultant with TGR Design, which is Tiger Woods golf course design firm located in Jupiter, Florida. Amanda is a licensed landscape architect with a diverse design background, including golf courses, hotel resorts, high-end residential, theme parks, community master planning, and commercial projects. Amanda has figured out and successfully married her lifelong passion of golf with her 15-year design career. We are extremely honored and thrilled that you're all here today. So Amanda, please say hello.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for listening in. And with the others, I am quite honored to be included on this panel. I've looked up to these three women in my career and would not have any of the opportunities that I have if it wasn't for the three of you and a few others fighting for women in golf.
There's been some people that have really been great pioneers, and it's great. We're all still kind of pioneers because it's still newfound territory that we're all breaking ground, right, as we say, since we're talking to you golf course architects. So I'd like to start with each of you to just give a short background of how you got into the industry, what your passion is about this, and what you actually do, and basically give it a little background. And let me start with Jan to kick it off, because Jan's been on this before and has done a great job, and everyone's fascinated with how everyone gets started. So Jan, if you could kick it off and just give us a little background on yourself, and then we'll start talking about sustainability after we get a little background on each of you.
Okay, thank you, Kay, and I appreciate everybody being here. I came in kind of at the front door. My father and 5 uncles were all club professionals. And so my father designed and supervised the construction of the golf course where I grew up. So I became accustomed to seeing heavy earthwork equipment when I went out the door or at 7 o'clock in the morning to go to grade school. That's how I got started. I started working on the golf course when I was 14, mowing greens, tees, fairways, digging ditches, raking bunkers. That was the mornings, obviously weekends and summers. And then worked the golf shop in the afternoon. So I had the opportunity to see the green grass side and then the retail side. So that was pretty important. It laid the groundwork for me. So I became a landscape architect. I studied landscape architecture just because that was the way to graphically convey my ideas about golf courses. And I was lucky enough to go to work with Tom Fazio early in my career, and from him and the people who he hired, I learned much. And without them, I wouldn't be here today. So that's my appreciation to all of them, as well as to everyone I've ever observed on a golf course, because good or bad, they've all taught me something.
Lessons well learned. So let me kick it over to Cynthia, and you can talk about yourself, because you're distinguished in your own right, but you did follow a very strong legacy.
Oh yeah. When I was 12, I'm from the town, Urbana, Ohio, where my grandfather built the first golf course. So I learned to play tennis. I don't know Mom says she gave us golf clubs and we just threw them down, but I don't think so. I think I was given a tennis racket. But anyway, my father opened an office when my uncle and him decided that they could make a business out of designing golf courses. And so we used to say everybody that was in the art department at Urbana High School had spent time drawing plans for my dad and my uncle. Anyway, I didn't pursue that career. I studied first botany, then I didn't want to be in a lab, and then I went to horticulture. So I became the plant lady, and I went on to landscape architecture. So they used to have me go around doing the landscape plans. I was a landscape lady for a long time. And then, I kind of evolved into the on-site construction manager. And from there, I was asked to do, well, you can do this. They kind of saw who was doing the work, and I was asked to do several golf courses. So I started my own business. And that has led me, I had an office in China for 8 years, and it's led me around the world.
I mean, that's awesome. I mean, we're going to talk more about your office in China and your global project. So, I mean, that's just amazing. So, all right, let me toss it to Kari, Miss Minnesota.
Well, I've never been called that before, but I'll take it. Miss Golf, Minnesota, maybe. Well, I came at it completely from a player perspective. I was a golfer in high school and college, and I grew up playing sand greens, if you want to believe that, and then moved to the country club in my hometown of Minnesota and got to playing grass greens. Went to college, played some college golf, but not very well. Had a lot of injuries, and then because of the injuries, I think I went on to become a physical therapist. I took the long route. These guys went direct. I took the long route. Physical therapist, and then I didn't want to be in the clinic, wanted to get back to my first love of golf. And so I went back, got a Master of Landscape Architecture from the University of Minnesota. And I was, I'm not going to tell you how old I was when I graduated, but then I moved to Scotland and studied golf course architecture over there at the University of Edinburgh, and got my degree there in a Master of Science in Golf Course Architecture, and became a member of the European Institute of Golf Course Architects. And that's where I'm at now. I am on the council. I serve as the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, as you mentioned. And so I've been doing research on women's golf now. Just completed a study last year with club champions, so have some good numbers to work with for hitting distances and such, and I apply that to my golf course architecture work now.
It's quite a journey how you got to Scotland. So I mean, that could be a whole nother story just in itself, but I think that's fascinating, and I think that I like it. I want to hear a little bit more about your research project with Club Champion and some of the numbers they have come up with. So that's great. Miss Amanda, how are you?
I'm good. I actually also took kind of the long route into golf design. I do have a degree in landscape architecture from the University of Georgia, and they did offer a focus on golf design your senior year, which I did do, but I graduated in the middle of the recession. So there were no jobs in golf design or any LA firm in the country, I don't think. So I actually played a couple seasons of amateur golf just to pass the time. And then when the economy trickled back, I jumped into high-end residential for a few years, and then civil engineering and environmental consulting for a few years. And then I hopped over to Orlando, Florida, did hotel resort and larger master planning projects. And then post-COVID, I started playing golf really heavily again, as I'm sure most people did. And somebody asked me why, if I was a landscape architect and I loved golf, why was I not designing golf courses? And I said, well, you have to know the right person, and I don't know the right person. So, but he put a bug in my ear, and I started browsing LinkedIn, and Beau Welling was hiring. Beau Welling's firm does traditional planning and golf design. So at the time, he was looking for someone with a little bit more of a planning background. So I actually did not even tell him that I loved and played golf until my interview, which was fun. So he was really excited about it. He informed me that there were not a lot of women doing this, and if I was interested in doing both, he would love for me to come on. So I gladly accepted a position with Beau just 2 years ago. And I have to add in that I think it was 4 or 5 months into the job, and I realized that I not only needed, but wanted a mentor. And although Beau is a mentor to me, I really wanted a female. So I asked Beau to help set me up with a mentor, and him and Jan Beljan had worked together at Tom Fazio's office. So we headed down to Jupiter a few weeks later and had dinner with Jan, and she's been my mentor since then. So we keep in touch regularly. We were actually just on site together last weekend in South Florida on one of her renovation projects. So I'm super grateful for the time that she spends with me, and I'm thankful to have a boss that supports women in golf.
Well, I'm glad that he supports her, but Jan is also a great mentor. And, WIGI is also starting a mentorship program for those of you who don't know. So anyone that wants to be a mentor, but it really is very helpful. And I think as women in the golf industry, we still know that it's still a male-dominated industry, which we'll get to if we have time. But I think I want to open up the discussion because when we first talked, we want to talk about sustainability, which I think Cynthia said, well, that's kind of a buzzword. So, what does that really mean? Is it just something we just kind of throw around? But what does it actually really mean? And, what does eco-friendly really mean? So I'm going to kind of toss it out because Cynthia, I think you said that when I first called, it's like, well, everyone says sustainability. Well, what does that really mean in golf course design? Want to start, Cynthia?
Sustainability to me is a more broad. A lot of people will say it's maintenance, but it's not maintenance, just maintenance. There's a lot about even from building a new golf course to old existing golf courses, making them more sustainable. But would be like, so you want to create a playing condition that minimizes turf, that minimizes water uses, minimizes fertilizer and everything, mowing, everything, to be more conservative approach to playing, to be more in harmony with the environment, and to create more environmental conditions within the golf course that make them a positive to not only the playing experience, because everybody likes to play on a beautiful golf course where you see nature and environment. That's kind of the charm of playing golf. But so that's, to me, is everything has to go together to create that kind of a setting for making it sustainable.
Any of you can pop in anytime of what you think.
Being able to enjoy our resources and our environment today in a way that conserves and preserves and even enhances the environment so that it's there for future generations to enjoy as well. And when I think about that, I want to do everything I can so that my nieces, my nephews, children today can have an environment and enjoy golf the way that I was able to enjoy golf when I was growing up. Go out and you see the frogs in the creek, and the water is clear in the creek, and the grass is green, and there's beautiful, wildflowers in the out of play areas, and that kind of environment. So when I think about sustainability, I think about that in terms of the environment, but in terms of cultural sustainability, I think of who are we bringing to golf, and who are we bringing to the game of golf, which is a cultural construct, the game, and how can we bring that next generation in so that we have a sustainable culture that then brings the money and the economics that can then be reinvested in the golf environment that we play upon. So that's how I would define it or look at it.
It's kind of interesting because when we first talked, you talked about it as a model of you had 3 cultures. Do you want to just talk about kind of define those a little bit more, because you just mentioned it, but kind of go over them again?
I look at it almost like a layer cake or even a recycling symbol, so the foundation of my model is the environment. And then on top of that, we lay the cultural game of golf and the people that come, and then the people that come bring the money. and then that money is reinvested in the environment. So it's kind of a cycle, if you will, but it's also a layer cake.
I think in my career in landscape architecture, it was really pushed on us in school, this environmental component. So I think people have started opening their eyes to how necessary it is to care about the environment and to protect it. So I see it a lot when we start these projects. They're usually on massive acreage of land, and we get an opportunity to kind of get in there and see what's going on, if everything is working really well. And a lot of times we probably expand some of the wetlands, and it's not just a reduction all the time. But I think coming from a landscape architecture background, it's just in you to kind of care about the environment. And as long as the team is built on those foundations, then everyone equally cares about walking away with a better product instead of something that's going to negatively affect the environment around it.
Good. Jan?
So I'll put this in a perspective, of a personal perspective, because as I said, my father designed and supervised the construction of the golf course where I grew up. And he was light on the land, if that makes sense, where there wasn't a lot of mass grading because there didn't have to be. And some places there does have to be, but not everywhere. To have people come play your golf course, it has to be interesting enough for them to be there and to be challenged. But it also needs to be, the interest is also part of the aesthetics, where the aesthetics are there by nature or because you've made changes to include that. Part of that nature is providing more cover for fauna, for birds and butterflies and land animals, mammals, reptiles, amphibians. All of those are taken into consideration in good design, because as Cynthia said, it's not just minimizing the turf area that you have, which then minimizes the mowable and the irrigated and the fed areas, but it provides more edges. And birds especially, most animals are edge creatures. They want to go between this edge and that. They don't want to cross long runs because it's dangerous to them because of the predators that pursue them. So to have them have short distances at the perimeters of fairways is really important, or an edge to get to water. So all of these things are things that when I think sustainability, I think economic viability. If the course does not live financially on its own, the property will be sold for something else, and you will not have whatever environment you created. It won't be there. And we've seen any number of golf courses that have closed because they were not able to be economically viable, even though they may have been designed well to have few inputs. So so much of it is wrapped up in demographics. It's wrapped up in what the owner wants. It's what the client wants, what the client thinks they need. But it's up to us as golf course architects to say, is that really what will work here? And if we can persuade that person, then we've done our job. If we can't, then we do the best job we can for whatever that client wants.
Because they were drought tolerant. Mm-hmm. And I know the USGA has been working for years on turf grasses that use less water. So I guess my question is there any way we can make the leap from golf course to regular landscapes with some of the plantings and things like that use less water in our lawns, or where your house, wherever it is that you live, so that we could use some plants that use less?
I like to jump in on that because I worked on that golf course because I went to ASU and I was living there, and I remember when they were having their first tournament, Uncle Pete wanted, he had to put for the cameras instant things. So I went to every nursery buying every cassia bush they had and sagebush, and he, because of the camera, they wanted it instant, so they planted them way too close. There was also another plant called acacia redolens, which was back then, okay, those were three types of plants, but since then, they've had all sorts of hybrids of the same type of desert plants. Now the acacia overgrew, the rats grew into it. I mean, it became a habitat that was not wanted in a residential community. And so they took it all out. And it became grass again. I remember when they came and just took it all out, and they wanted continuous cart paths, a bunch of different stuff. I think they're remodeling it again right now, but anyway, I think turf reduction is a big thing in our industry. I think it's probably one of the number one things in remodeling today is to do turf reductions because of the water shortages and the water demands of a golf course, which is about time, if you ask me. I don't build golf courses wall-to-wall grass anymore, and back then that they did. So it's evolving. And one of the things about sustainability would be pick the right turf for your area. There are so many innovations in turf grass these days that they're making them all more drought tolerant, mowing less. That's even more sustainable. If you don't have to mow your grass as much, they all leave a carbon imprint on your property. So anything you could do to less is best.
Think about the labor costs in that too. So going back to kind of what Kari was saying too, is about, the economics of the whole thing. Do you get a lot of pushback when you're designing it for less turf grass from the people that you're designing for?
They want to build these championship golf courses. And that's, in my opinion, it's simply not sustainable to build these big muscle man golf courses. We need to figure out how to cut them back just a little bit, and we need to figure out how to use native grasses in the out of play areas, which it's not hard to do, but people don't think they're aesthetically as beautiful. They're really hooked on this the Masters and Augusta National aesthetic, and it's just not sustainable everywhere. And I also really love that we have all women on this panel, because I think women have a different approach to sustainable design. I think we have a very light hand on the land, and I think of landscapes as being a very feminine thing, and that might have been from, I did some training over in Portugal, and they view the landscape as a feminine element.
Ronnie had asked, what is the number one sustainable project that can be done that will have a big impact?
To me, it's the analysis that all the pre-stuff that goes into a golf course is the number one thing you need to consider.
Which kind of leads us to what you've all talked about too, is making it women friendly and women designed. I mean, I think there's a big difference in these big, huge golf courses that we don't need to necessarily have. Do you want to kind of talk about how to make it women friendly and sustainable?
To say that all the courses now are being all so much lengthened, new courses are not. There are more golf courses now being built that are par threes, that are short courses, than there are full-size courses. And the full-size courses are not going to the 7,400 yards unless they fully intend to have, unless they're at elevation, somewhere Colorado, somewhere in the mountains, or if they fully intend to host a major event. And so many of those events are already taken for the next decade at least. So it's pretty hard to say who's going to be able to have what 10 years from now or 12 years from now. If you look at the four majors in men's golf, the majors in women's golf are not featured that far out, but then again, we don't need to have the yardage for the women. Back in 2012, I did an analysis of the USGA handicaps, and there were at the time 2 million handicap holders. So that's a pretty good subset. That's not like it's 1,000 or 10,000, it's 2 million people who had handicaps. And so I had a pretty good confidence in what I learned from having studied that. And from there, I determined that, and brought it to the attention of the USGA and others, that the most forward tees were not far enough forward, even though Alice Dye had proposed that some years earlier, maybe 5 or 7 years earlier, I had lunch with her, and you'll not be surprised at this, Cynthia, with her and Pete one time, and she was in her 80s, and she said, I didn't put them far enough forward. So she
My age, I believe that.
yeah, well, that was the whole point.
Everybody says, where do you play golf? I go on a die golf course. They have forward tees, but they're not far enough for me anymore.
Well, that's right. So it made me chuckle when she said that, because she was still a long ball hitter in her 70s.
Yes.
She was sneaky long. So anyway, to have the tees set up, and I'm going to say, you can go back and see I talked in USGA quoted me in a magazine back in 2000 about I was designing for club head speed, and most other people were not talking that talk back then. That's 23 years ago. And I didn't just come up with the concept then. I've been doing it prior to that, because again, I learned this from my father and my uncles who were teachers. They taught from the perspective of how fast the club head hit the ball. So that was something with which I grew up, that how fast the club head is when it hits the ball is how far the ball is going to go, straight or crooked. So that helped me understand early how to design for the people who had those slower club head speeds. My dad, when he did the design for the course where I grew up, because he was the pro there too, and the pro superintendent, the pros at the time had the golf shop. And when didn't have a salary, so you had to work. And Kay, you may remember hearing stories about this from some of your colleagues, but if you didn't have the revenue in the golf shop, then you didn't eat. So the best way to have people play was to have tees that would be set up for them. And my dad knew how to do that. So that was that's more than 50 years ago. So, but the people came to play because they all felt comfortable playing the golf course, because they could play from a set of markers that suit them, even though there were only 3 sets then, the typical red, white, and blue, and not as many as we have now. So in doing that and designing for those slower club head speed players, as Kari had said, is that you can shorten the fairways, which means you don't need to spend as much time mowing fairways. Perhaps might spend a little more time mowing tees, but it balances from the superintendents with whom I've spoken, who have implemented the tees that I've put in. They say it's a wash, so that's good. And then as soon as you do that and you get people playing from the appropriate sets of markers for their club head speed, for their distance, then you can also minimize some of the other which should be deemed out of play turf, which allows you to have whether it's native plants, native grasses, or an inanimate feature like coquina or concrete screenings or desert. You can have more of that. What have you seen, Amanda?
Well, I was just sitting here listening and thinking it's difficult for the low handicap player when they can place the ball from tee to landing area to green. They wouldn't care if there was sandy waste or native in between those areas completely. But it's the high handicap player or low swing speed that needs to be able to play the ball on the ground. They need to have access to the green on the ground, because they might not be able to carry the ball and stop it on the green. So I think studying everything ahead of time and having the forward tees and making the turf area up to the green there, but the back tees certainly can carry native areas, and providing native areas that are playable still, which is very easy to do on a sandy site. You can have a sandy waste area that is sand that's easy to hit out of. Now, if you have all high grass, 12 inches of grass, that's really hard to find your ball, and it's really hard to hit your ball, especially for high handicap players.
Amanda is speaking my language right now. I love it. That's exactly kind of my philosophy of designing and finding a pathway for play for the the forward tee players along the ground, finding a ground game accessible all the way from tee to green, and finding that pathway and designing that pathway is kind of key to designing for the shorter hitter. Because exactly like Amanda said, these longer hitters from the back tees, they're hitting it to a landing area, and they're hitting it from the landing area to the green. And the no man's land in between doesn't matter to them one bit, but it really matters to the slower swing speed player, women, seniors, beginners, that kind of player.
That's why it's so important to have these multiple tees, because I mean, I work mostly international, and I have reduced turf because they're desert areas, and getting people, if you don't have the multiple tees, then you do have carries, because one of the places that you can reduce turf is around your tees. And if you don't have them up close enough, yeah, they will have carries, and it doesn't mean anybody. But if you can get them all to move up. But a lot of cultures, they have a set of tees that they all play, no matter their ability. They play from one set of tees because they're in their group and they're going to play those tees. So that's where it becomes difficult for me, is that they're not playing on their appropriate tee, and to get these guys, to move up, is been a fight, to tell you the truth. But even though they say, oh, you can only put four tees in, I stick them all over the place.
I love it. I love it.
And then I always make, and I'll make something in the beginning of the fairway, like here's a flat spot. Okay, when you can't get them over here, just you put your markers here, and then everybody will move up. And you always need multiple ladies tee. I remodel a course back east, and it's all about inter-club play. Okay, I play this in this league, what my league plays here, they don't want to play up, and so you have people playing the wrong tee, women, especially in club play, because they're playing at their course on this tee, but that they can't get them to come to their course because they're better players. So I like it. I'm like, you can't play. I can't play from those tees. Why are you doing this to yourself?
You're absolutely right, because I get a lot of players at the interclub stuff, and women have egos, and they go, I don't want to hit it long. It's kind of interesting, because when I first turned professional, I played on a men's mini tour, and so I could pick my own tees, and I was about 20% less distance than they were, which was fine. So I picked my own tees. But during practice rounds, there were times I played the blue tees with them, and there were times they played the forward red tees, and then I would play the white tees when we actually played. And what they taught me was, from the red tees, I learned how to score. From the back tees, I learned to hit it longer, and I've had to play from the white tees, so I had the combination of both. So we tried to mix it up, and I have some very good single handicap players that now she plays the back tees once in a while because she wants to work in her short game. She plays the forward tees because she wants to learn how to score. So it's a matter, I think, considering I'm in education, of educating the player of how to get different things from where you should be playing.
I always encourage people to play. I typically play from one or two back, but if I play from the forward tees, it will really test your driver accuracy if you are playing there, because the landing area is a lot smaller. And I encourage people all the time, even my guy friends, you should play from the forward tees. And if you're not breaking 80 from the forward tees, you should be playing from the forward tees.
Yeah. Kari, you were going to say,
No, I'm loving what everybody's saying here. I guess I could play a little bit off of what Cynthia was saying about, the forward tee system for women that Alice Dye had come up with, recommended these two tees, a two forward tee system. And what I've kind of moved to is what Cynthia was talking about, and multiple tees. It's not just two. It's, I've hopefully taken Alice's ethos one step further and said, it's a multiple tee system, and we need I call it playable pathways, and I've written some articles about it on LinkedIn and such. But taking more than one tee and not all coming from the same starting place. They come from different starting places, and I create basically a course within a course. And like Cynthia was saying, you know, I put them down everywhere. And you kind of do have to do that so that the landing areas are sufficient to capture and capture, you know, a landing area is designed to hold a shot. You don't want a ball going into the face of a hill at an angle and shunting it off into the rough or somewhere worse, maybe a hazard or something. You want that landing area to be receptive to the shot. And sometimes you have to put the tee in a different location so that the distance to the landing area is appropriate and that landing area receives the shot. So
Are you finding that the landing area, how you design it, if I'm playing from the white tees and I hit it 240 and then I have to play, that the landing area is the same from the different tees? Is that?
I don't do it that way. I mean, that maybe has been done in the past, but I don't
know. I'm just asking.
I try to get the landing area ahead of the landing area for the shorter hitter. I try to get that ahead of the landing area that's designed from the back tee, because that second shot is also shorter. So you have to figure out a way for on a par 4, for example, the second shot, you have to figure out a way for them to be able to access the green. So there maybe is a secondary landing area off of the tee that will receive the shot for the shorter hitter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Amanda probably doesn't have a problem with that, but I mean, you look at it. I mean, I played golf the other day, and every time that caddy handed me out my 5-wood for a second shot, and everybody else, like, the guys are hitting 7-irons to a green, and the green's set up for a 7-iron shot, not a 5-wood. You know, my aunt always taught me, she goes, you can't make that shot, so just hit an approach shot. You know, so I'm big on hitting. If I'm hitting 5-woods and I'm going to get in trouble, I'd rather just lay up and then chip on, hopefully.
But you know what? That forces us to be not as good of golfers. It forces us to not play. Whereas if we would design a green that had an accessible pathway for us, a playable pathway, we could, we could play.
You know how excited I would be
for our game. Yeah.
How excited I'd be if somebody handed me a 7-iron for my second shot.
We can do that. I mean, we the architects of the course, we can design it so it's playable for the shorter hitter. Yeah. It just takes a little extra thought of how to do that. How, you know, what configuration is the green? Where is the landing area? What's the angle of play? You know, we just have to think through a little bit more. Yeah.
I was just going to say, and when you're designing it, you don't want to take the strategy and play out of the game for the forward tees. So you really have to think about, you know, if everybody's playing to the 150 marker is the landing area. Now the forward tee, 150 yards is still maybe a driver into the green. So they need to be up 90, 80, 70 yards. And so they're playing the same golf hole that the back tee is playing and experiencing, which is really tough to do sometimes.
And that's fine. We can all hope to do that, because I've been doing that, but you better take into account the trajectory, because anybody with a slow club head speed has a lower trajectory. So even if you hit a 7-iron, your 7-iron is not gonna be the same as his 7-iron. So for you to be able to stop the ball or back it up is probably not as likely if your trajectory isn't the same. So it's a very complex, it's much more complex to deal with anything more forward, but the people with the slower club head speeds, they often become the most skilled with their short games for all good reasons. So they may not have the long game, but they do have the short game, and that's how they compensate. And I think you could probably look at that in the men's tour as well as the women's tour. The people who are modest in their driving are more accurate and tend to be maybe better short game players. Do you see that, Kay?
I do, and I always tell them, in it, the better you get with your short game, you're going to start to hit more greens because it takes the pressure off. So they do get better with their short games. You're absolutely right, and that's actually where it should start because of the scoreability. But I like the idea of because most women, let's say we talk about women friendly, going to what Cynthia said, you hit your driver, you hit your 5 wood, and then you hit your pitching wedge, and you get 3 to get on. And so you're there having to hit 5 woods on almost every hole, and the guy's hitting, maybe a fairway wood 4 times, period. A woman's hitting, back in the day in Minnesota, I could hit my driver off the deck. I got my little 7 wood out now because the fairways are all cut so tight now. I mean, we used to have nice little cushy grass, So you talk about the grass, and it's much different in how it's even cut because mowers have changed, I think, too. So. And there's
the mowing heights have changed because the turf types have changed, because the turf types, as you said before, have been there's been a lot of research done by not just the USGA. They funded some of the research, but the research is primarily done at universities for varied turf types throughout the different regions of the country. So there are some that need to be more drought tolerant. You get into the middle section of the country, where it's the transition zone. You could have ultra cold days and ultra hot days, and to find a grass that suits the turf that suits play, where it can be down to below 0 4 days in a row. Will that turf survive when it comes spring? Are you going to have green up, or is it going to be dead? And when you get 90-degree temperatures for days in a row, is that going to die? Because so there's a lot of different things with the turf types that make a difference. And mowing, as you said, is one of those.
So you just described Minnesota. It gets down below 0 and it gets above 90 degrees.
It gets well below 0 in Minnesota. It gets well below 0, not just below 0, well below 0. And for months, not days.
Yeah. Just right. Carrie should just describe Minnesota.
Describing Minnesota. And I'm so lucky. I have a beautiful evening. I have a tea time in an hour, and I'm happy. No, it's about 75, 80 degrees here today, and low humidity, and it's a beautiful evening.
Yeah. And then the mosquitoes will be out too. But anyway, that's a whole nother subject. During one of our conversations, I'm going back to Cynthia for a second, you used the word, and if you geo certified, can you talk a little, because I didn't know what that was, and I think it's fascinating if you just talk a little bit of what the heck that means.
Well, because where I'm in Europe, they started geo, I don't know, 15 years ago or so. And it's kind of similar to our Audubon, but as Jan said, it's backed by the RNA, and they are basically is to they have a certification process, but it's not just for golf courses too. It's to make everything more environmentally and socially responsible in the management and the maintenance of their golf courses. So, and the building. So there's a lot of criteria they want you to achieve. Most of my golf courses in Europe and in the Middle East have to be net zero. So in their carbon input, and there's a lot of different ways, solar, even that starts even with the golf carts, so it's not just the golf course, it's everything that goes into the golf development.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, they want to, so the GEO really wants to be seen, they want golf to be seen as part of the climate solution, not part of the climate problem. And it's a great organization. I just was in Iceland recently for a conference, and they talked a lot about, GEO was there, and they talked a lot about carbon par and trying to have this net zero goal for protecting the environment, and seeing golf courses can help with that rather than be part of the problem. It can be part of the solution.
Well, golf courses have been part of the solution for a long time. It's that there are people who choose to decry them because only about 10% of the population plays golf. The other 90%, if they've even tried it, many of them are disenchanted with it because it's not easy. They have no success early. And so, Kay, speak to that one. no success early. And so then the other part is that golf has been perceived as being elitist. And so when people want to have an easy target, golf is an easy target. So the Audubon International was started about 30 years ago because golf courses were doing things that were environmentally responsible, but nobody talked about them. And most of those things happened because there were laws in place via national, state, or local laws that had environmental requirements to not go into this wetland, stay out of this upland, get rid of the invasive species. Nobody here's talked about invasive species yet, but if that's probably, from my perspective, one of the most egregious environmental disasters is the number of invasive species, whether they're plant or animal. Mm-hmm. So in Florida, we've got not just invasive plants from everywhere, but we also have pythons. We've got iguanas. I mean, iguanas are burrowing into the soil on lake banks, and they Swiss cheese it so that next thing you know, your land is collapsing, but you're still paying taxes on what you used to have before it went into the water. So there are a lot of things that people don't realize where golf courses are very beneficial. Golf courses, and I should say the golf course superintendents especially, are on the leading edge of those things that are being environmentally responsible. I mentioned the other day that the Florida was the first state that created the BMPs, Best Management Practices. And I was on the committee. I was on the Florida Turfgrass Association at the time. And there were a lot of scientists from not just the University of Florida, but other places, as well as golf course superintendents, put together a 100-page document that was approved by the Department of Environmental Protection. And those were best management practices for Florida that have last year or the year before, I think, all 50 states now have their own best management practices based on that. So, and part of those best management practices is design, golf course design or redesign. So I would like everybody here to appreciate the fact that the environment is being well considered, and to look at a golf course that was done 20 years ago and attach today's requirements to it is unfair, because 20 years ago was 20 years ago, complete generation ago. And what was in the golf courses then were probably the best they could be at the time, given the maintenance equipment, construction methods, construction materials, people, and just the whole design process. What we do today, given the same land today, something different might be done.
Well said.
Yeah, I think it's really important that as golf course architects, we got to ensure that our clients and they are keeping up with the latest science, whether it's grasses, equipment, mowing equipment, the whole thing.
And along those lines, we are the responsible ones too. Like if we go into a design meeting and they don't have any women on their design committee, or their, a lot of clubs will have a greens committee, or they'll have a design guidance committee. And if they don't have any women represented on that committee, I feel like it's our responsibility to say, can you have somebody from your women's club join you to give some input in this. I work a lot with renovations, so I don't do a lot of new design, but I like to see women on my committees.
So I know we're coming to a close here. So just one final thought from each one of you on what each of us could maybe do in our own community to maybe educate, help that along to make it more sustainable and more women friendly. Just one final thought from maybe each one of you, what each of us could do in our own community. Jan.
You yourself play from the proper set of markers.
Well, I'm moving way forward now. I'm way up now. I used to be way back. I'm way forward now.
Because if you do it, you can lead other people to do it. And if more women are perceived, and if you have a male companion players with you, have them play from the same set of markers with you, and bet them even up. And I bet you'll take home the winnings.
Oh, I always do that part. That's how it's given. The other thing I wanted to say too is I give everybody a bunch of teas, and everybody knows my business partner in education golf, so she tees everything up wherever we go in the fairways. So they go, really, we can do that? Yes, you have permission to do that. So tee it up because they want to be more successful. They come back and they're happier than whatever. So this is my new teaching teas, these little guys. Okay.
I would say promote diversity. So I'm on the diversity, equity, and inclusion. I would say promote diversity, whether that's racial diversity, religious diversity, sexual orientation diversity, women, gender diversity. I mean, just promote diversity, because I think the more people that we have coming in and enjoying this wonderful game that we have, again, I come from a player perspective. It's a game, and we need to have fun. We need to have a broad cultural spectrum of people to financially sustain the game, which then can be put back into the environment so that we can enhance the environment for future generations. So promote diversity. That would be my quip.
I think that's super, because it's like when you were all kids, everybody got to play. It didn't matter how you play, but everybody got to play. Amanda?
From a sustainability point of view, and Kathleen, I think this answers the question that you had earlier, is reach out to your local extension office. You can check your municipality, and the code usually has a list of preferred plant species and native species, whether they're pollinators or whatever you're looking for. There's something that is the best suited for your local environment.
Super. Cynthia, you get the final word.
I would say education to your players around the golf course. If you have something to be protected, tell them, educate them on it, have them, understand it and respect it. And I think that's the way to promote environmental, sustainability around the golf course. Show what you're doing to promote it.
One of the other things I could suggest about that is we're just starting this mentorship program with WIGI, and it's with the Marilyn Smith Scholarship Foundation and what they call the Pearls, who they give scholarships to some of these women. And they all want to have a mentor, but they all have different, areas of where they want to be. So it would be helpful to direct somebody to say, hey, how you guys started your career. And so if you maybe join the mentorship program, and it basically, we have one of our WIGI members starting this, to where that you just connect with somebody once or twice a year.
I'm so glad to hear that some of these women are finding places, because, we get a lot, the EIGCA gets a lot of requests, and I'm sure the ASGCA gets them also. And we don't have a good pathway, because they have to find a sponsor, they have to find a mentor, they have to find somebody to work with in their office. And we just don't have a good pathway to educate them. And we need more women I think we need more women at the design table. So I'm really glad to hear some of these people are finding a spot.
When you said EIGCA gets a lot of requests, what kind of requests? What are the requests?
They're interested. They're interested in the field of golf course architecture. They're hungry. They want to know more. They want to learn maybe a few things and see if that's the right pathway for them.
Is that what you do on that committee, on that council?
I don't know. With the diversity, equity, and inclusion, no. We're working on looking at different ways that we can. Right now, I'm really focusing on women. How can we make the game better for women from a design perspective? Mm-hmm. And I think if we can get more women in the game from as players, then that opens doors in the industry and other places. So
Oh,
we're looking at it from a design perspective, a course design perspective.
Beau and I just had this conversation last week, actually, about recruiting and trying to find more women in the industry. And we do have an internship program in the summer. I think that if there's anybody that's interested in golf design, and especially if they enjoy the planning side of landscape architecture as well, please have them contact me, because I'm sure even out of the country, if they wanted to do an internship, that was something that we can probably work with them with. And we have a lot of work right now. So,
And I'm going to say too, I'm going
helpful.
to talk about WIGI because it's about making connections, because like you guys
Yeah.
have just all got connected. Have them join WIGI. We now have corporate
Okay.
memberships where you can do 2, 3, 4, 5 under, you know, an umbrella of your corporation or whatever, which is relatively reasonable. And right now, if they join, it's for a year and a half too. So the dues, I think it depends on what kind of program you get into, but get them to join, because then they start to make connections. And then I love putting them on committees, because as soon as they have committees, then they got to start talking to everybody too. So you guys were awesome. Thank you for your time, because I know everybody's busy. I'm glad I got to meet all of you, and I'm glad we put all this together. So, well, I want to thank you all for being on this panel. You guys are great, and you're a wealth of knowledge. And yeah, everybody can take yourself off here and give them a clap. Thank you again for being here. Thank you all for being here. Member of WIGI, remember, get somebody else to join. We need more women in the golf industry, and the more connections we make are great. Please join a committee. And if you haven't renewed, please renew. But again, thank you to our panelists. You guys have been great. Thank you for taking the time, because I know you're all being busy and being sustainable. So thank you very much.